Welcome to the podcast. I'm here with Andy. This is Becoming an Elite Financial Advisor. And today we are going to be talking about commitment.
We have a framework that we're going to share, and I know that it's going to be helpful to you. And I want to encourage you, whatever app you're watching this in or listening to it on, we're going to have a link to a guide that is going to walk you through these levels of commitment and applying it to your life. And so look at the show notes there for sure. I think that this is a topic that can be revisited every day, every week, not just New Year's, right? Because that's really the time that most people really get focused around commitment. But I've been challenged, and I appreciate you sharing this with me, these levels of commitment, because this exercise, it puts a name to things that are real in our lives. And I think that people are really going to enjoy the episode because it puts a name to something that we all universally experience like day in and day out.
Yeah, it's that feeling, and we coach hundreds of advisors, just the frustration of life with things when we all have goals and desires. That when we sit with advisors, when I coach business owners, there are times passionate about these things. If all it took was an idea, we'd all have companies and be living our dreams. But it's the follow through, it's the execution that is the biggest piece that most people miss. So what I loved is I first got introduced to this content and I visualized it. I was like, it makes sense that it's a progression, that there's more than just like, there's a continuum. It's not just you're in or you're out.
Yeah.
Because there's people that are like, hey, I have an idea, but I'm going to, that's all it's going to go. And then people kind of get down the road. And I've seen so many people be so passionate, invest so much money into ideas and companies that don't work out. And for the people I've surrounded myself with, a lot of times they're doers. Like for some reason, everything they touch works. That's
the one that there's a mystery there. And I think, again, we're going to break it down today as to giving a name to this experience a lot of us have seen. But there's this people, it's like, why is it what they do work? I will say this, there's a gentleman that I followed for a long time, Chris Guillebeau is his name, and wrote a few books, and I went to a conference, used to be called the World Domination Summit.
Nice.
Which he always said is a good name for a conference until you're at the airport and ask where you're going. And you're like coming from another country, and you're like, I'm going to the World Domination Summit. Like, okay, that's awkward. But I remember someone asking him, like, Chris, why does everything you do work? And he said, because the things I do that fail, you don't see because they went away. Yeah. So it's not actually true that everything that he said I do works. But what is true is there are people, as you said, Sten, that have figured out this level of commitment, and they figure out very quickly, nope, I'm not going to do that anymore. Yep. Or I'm going all in on this, and it's going to work. And what do you know? A lot of things work for them.
Yep. And sometimes you do, and I've learned this the hard way at times when I've dabbled in some things, and they took a lot of energy, a lot of money, a lot of time, and then you have something that works, and you're able to compare the thing that worked and what was required to go into it versus the things that didn't. And so our hope as we go through this today is that if you're in business, if you're an advisor, you've learned some things the hard way, is that we can give you this tool and resource that you can start using as a filter, that the ultimate goal is some of this stuff becomes instinctual. That like to others, it appears you're making these decisions quickly and naturally, when before, what you know is that you had to learn to do it because maybe there was a time where you're like, I dabbled in a lot of things, none of them worked, and I felt like I was the problem versus my commitment level being the problem.
Yeah. I think we have to overcome our nature, and our level of commitment is tied to our nature, and whether you see that from a religious perspective or not. But like, I think that my nature is not the strongest. My nature is I like to stay in bed, and your nature is I don't like cold plunges, but you do cold plunges, right? Like it's not our human nature is like to keep our blood warm.
Yes.
So when you get into your cold plunge, it's not like this is a great idea. Oh, yeah. Your body is going. You are blankety, blankety, blank, get out, right?
Yeah, we need to be aware and we need to disrupt the system. I remember hearing before I started doing some of the cold plunge stuff that most people live their life in like 70 degrees. You go from your car to your house to your office, and the whole goal is comfort.
Yeah.
And there's obviously health benefits to some of those things, but for me, it's at times catching my mind leaning towards comfort and giving it an opportunity to choose a different path.
Yeah.
And so we'll start walking through the scale now.
Yeah. So again, this is the 5 levels of commitment. I do want to say this. I can't pronounce this guy's name, and because when I tried earlier, I was talking to April about it, and she just laughed at me.
That's Robert Wubbolding.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Does that sound good?
Yeah. Whatever I said, she just laughed. I made
Robert, if you're listening, we're sorry.
Like a cartoon character.
Wubbolding.
Yeah, it was bad. She's like, "Do you stutter?" But But so this has been originated and described quite well by the doctor that you had mentioned. I'm not going to say his name. And along with a gentleman named William Glasser. So this is the 5 levels of commitment, and I just think it breaks down a reality in a way that is very, very helpful. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to give a short summary, and then I want you to kind of give some color to each one of these. Okay. Perfect. The first one is called, and I love that this is where it starts, lack of commitment.
Yeah.
So what this basically is, this is acceptance or apathy. Mm-hmm. So tell us what this one looks like. In short, you just said, I don't want to change. Like I have no commitment. I don't ask me about quitting that thing or starting that thing. Like I'm fine.
The way I've experienced this more often is when people are like, I'm just not, that kind of thing is not something I do.
Interesting.
Like the way they view themselves is like, I don't accomplish big things. Nobody in my family has ever done that. And so it's almost like I don't even start the race.
Well, let's go even smaller. Like, oh, I don't work out. Like that's just not something I do. Like they just go, the first, and this is why I love it. The first level of commitment is you don't want any. You're not even lying to yourself. You don't even try. Because the next level before we get into it, is sort of hoping, but you don't do anything. You don't even want this thing. Yeah. You're just like, no, I'm good.
Yeah, I think that's like you don't see yourself as successful. You don't see yourself as accomplishing hard things. And part of that is probably buried in your story somewhere. When you think about mine, single mom, 3 sisters, like nobody made much money. And so for you, it may not be that you don't have the desire or the ability, but it may just be like you don't know any better. Like you know any different than like I just grind and barely make it by. And the good news is we get to work with so many people that I've seen so many different types of advisors reach this crazy level of success. Their stories are different. Some came from nothing. Some came from a lot of things. Like the background is more or less the story we have to take hold of. It should not be the thing that tells us who we're going to be.
Yeah.
And that's where I see the biggest hang up in this is it's more of a mindset issue than a reality.
Yeah. So the first one is they call it lack of commitment, which is just you don't want the thing. You've talked yourself out of the thing. You're not even hoping for the thing.
Yep.
The second one.
I'll say one more thing before we move on from there. Most of these people will tell you that they want the ultimate outcome of that thing, though. Meaning, if I said to somebody, you could work less, help more people, and make more money, they would say, that sounds good. I want that. Very few people would be like, no, I don't want all the benefits of it.
Yeah.
So most people will say, I want the benefit. I want to practice with a great team that's healthy. But when the obstacle or challenge is put in front of me, that's where I don't think I have what it takes. So
the next one, level 2, is they want outcome without effort.
Mm-hmm.
So I think actually what you talked about falls into number 2. I think there's some people that just reject it as like my identity is that's how much money I'm always going to make. Mm-hmm. I don't want a big practice or whatever it might be. But they're actively resisting the good outcome. The next one is I want it, but I am going to put no effort. I'm just going to literally their effort is I want it.
Like almost an entitlement to an outcome.
This is where I hear it. Oh, that sounds nice. That must be nice. Like, yeah, it is. If you work for it, you can have it. Oh, no, that must be nice. Must be a great problem to have all those, it's like, it's this, and they would take it, but they don't want to work for it at all.
Yeah.
So it's literally just this level of commitment. I shouldn't say they, because there's things that are true in my life, I'm sure. But this is full of wish, hope, and fantasy. You want to lose weight. You do nothing to lose weight. You want to get stronger. You do nothing physically right? You want a better relationship. You don't change any of your habits as it relates to that relationship. You don't it literally only exists on an emotional level.
Yeah.
The next one is trying. And another I was spending some thesaurus time today. Me and thesaurus. What'd
you come up with, dude? I want to know.
Dabble or waste.
Nice.
Which is that you just try stuff. But the minute, and this is the characteristic of this one, the minute it gets difficult, you bail. The minute there's any level of resistance whatsoever, you go, nope, I'm out.
Yeah.
So where do you see people do this with advisors? Like where do advisors go, maybe, and the minute it gets hard, they go, I'm going to go back to whatever.
I've experienced this when advisors observe or perceive other advisors having success, and they somehow interpret, without even asking or being curious, the things that are being done to get that outcome. And so they'll try it for just a little bit of a time, where all they're doing is just a fraction of what it took to make that happen. Let's, for example, say an advisor is really successful putting on events.
Yeah.
There's so much that goes into a good event. invite list, what's the invite look like, what's the follow-up, so much. But if you just say, hey, events look like they're making that advisor money, so I'm just going to come up with a topic and invite a bunch of people and it should just work out. And then when only 5 people show up, they say, I'm never going to do it again.
Yeah.
If you've done events enough, you know that sometimes 5 people may show up, but you're still going to do the next one because 20 people show up to that one. And so the dabble of, I'll put out just enough effort, and then as quickly as possible when the feedback is not overwhelmingly positive, as quickly as I want it to, I'm going to move on to the next thing. Because what our business will not argue is that activity is good. And so at times the lie could be, I'm an advisor, so I'm just going to do a bunch of stuff. And if I just do a bunch of stuff harder and longer than other people, it'll work out.
Yeah.
And the quality is not necessarily the priority.
So they say that this phase is characterized by phrases like, I'll try, probably, I'll start doing that. Mm-hmm. And I love this phrase, trying is weak. It means we will take action until we hit something difficult and challenging, and at that moment we quit. Mm. And the problem with this, and it's more so in the next level, but the problem is then you can say, I tried.
Yeah.
You check the box. Yep, I tried that. But and this is what I find a little scary, and I think this is a healthy scary, is the author states, the bare minimum to get by standard is a calling card of the dabbler and never leads to mastery. I agree with that. That makes sense.
Fair.
It also rarely, this is the interesting part I thought, it rarely leads to great outcomes, consistent results, wealth, love, or happiness. And by rarely, I mean never. And I think that should haunt us, that it's like, if you try something and the moment you feel resistance, you stop. Mm. And this is why I want people to go to get the resource, because we're going to have you do an inventory of your life and your levels of commitment applied to the things you say you want.
Yep.
Is how many times have you just tried and tried and tried and you haven't succeeded, and yet you go, well, I tried.
Yeah.
Right. Try becomes, that's why I love it. He says trying is weak.
Dude.
That's like if Yoda was harsh.
Nice.
Trying's weak, man. Because he says like there is no try or something like that. There either is or isn't. There's no try. But the new version we tried is weak.
Yeah, that brings up a lot. I think You
need a minute?
No, I just, the interactions I've had so many to where like I feel like I want it so badly for the advisor, they want it for themselves, but I would almost maybe argue most advisors fall into this bucket, or maybe it's a blend between 3 and 4, and we'll talk about 4, but I'm not going to push myself beyond, and we'll talk about number 4 here in a second on kind of what that looks like. But the proverbial box checker of activity, that they're more concerned with preserving what they think they know to be true in their comfort,
yes,
than blowing it up in order to get the result at all costs.
The reason that what you said is true is because the truth that most advisors live in this third phase or stage is the try, because most advisors aren't advisors anymore. Mm-hmm. They were advisors, right? Because they tried it and then they didn't commit to it.
8, 9 out of 10 in 5 years are gone.
Right, right. And so I do think that there's a lot of advisors living in level 4, which is where they say, I'm going to do my best, right? And so this is effort and then accepting failure. And many try and then many accept the results of their efforts. Mm-hmm. So the reason it's different than trying is you don't just quit when it gets hard, right? That you really feel like, hey, I'm really going to apply myself for 30 days, for 60 days, for this year, for, I'm gonna write the check. Mm. I'm gonna hire the company. I'm gonna hire the PR company. I'm gonna redo the website, man. We are gonna redo the website
again.
Again. But you know what I mean? It's like, I'm gonna go on the trip.
Yep.
I'm gonna show up, right? Now this isn't like I'm going to download the podcast. I'm not going to put that. I'm talking like, you're going to buy the course, mm-hmm. right? And the problem is that people will say, and I love this quote, well, I did my best. Guess I'm just not meant to get X or achieve Y.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you, is where do you think this leaves people? Like that would be, if I was stuck there, if I never got to level 5, it would essentially end up being that I'm the problem. Like that success is elusive to me because I've given it all I can, and it just isn't happening.
You think that?
I don't.
You think that? Oh, see, I was like,
no. I think if people are stuck in this, and I'm trying to think of if you're listening and you're like, hey, that's where I think I am.
I think I disagree with you. So here's where I think people are. If they do 4 and if they do level 4, which is I tried and I'm just not really meant for it, or it wasn't possible for me. Mm-hmm. I think what they're simply saying is, hey, I did my best. Like, that's not on me.
So I'm okay with it.
Situationally, it wasn't. And yes, I think that's the danger. And this is what they say about level 4. This is the most dangerous level, is because you really do, you write the check, you go to the event, and then it doesn't work. Then you can truly say, because before you're just dabbling, the minute it gets hard. Yeah. If you said to someone, did you join the gym? Yes. How many times did you go? I went 3 times. Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you really think you gave your full effort? No, not really. They would admit to that. But the problem with this one is, no, I tried it for, there's a big influencer right now that's going through a major health transformation. And one of the things he said is, I've been doing this for 6 months. And he said, I have crazy respect, because I think his perception was it's like a 30-day thing. And he's like, no, it's a lifelong thing. Oh, yeah. So I would say where most people are at in level 4 is they take comfort in saying, I really gave it my all. Yeah. But they never gave it their all.
I think back to some specific phone calls I had, and I met people that were stage 4s, made the investment, did the thing, and it didn't work. And they were left feeling like, I just can't be in this business. Like the result of all of their effort means they put everything they could into it and it didn't get a result.
Okay.
It wasn't like an encouraging out. It was more of a disheartening.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, I appreciate the clarification. Like, I wouldn't say that these people also end up going, well, I feel good about it. Like, they don't feel good about it, but they also sort of don't blame themselves. They just go, well, it wasn't meant to be.
Yeah.
And maybe that's true sometimes. Yeah. But
the tough thing for me on this one, and I appreciate the word they use, because this is what the person feels. Like, you feel like you gave your best, right. But we know, it's because we've helped people break through these best barriers, right. Is that it's not. Like, you are capable of so much more than you know. As of now, though, you think that's all you have.
Right.
But we've seen advisors go from, I've never charged for advice, I just do this, I've never thought I was going to have a business like this, to, I make 6 figures a year charging for advice, I've hired multiple people,
right.
And who they were before is a fraction of what they've become. And talking to their past self, and this is my story too, 16-year-old Sten would be like, there's no way I have companies with team members. Like, that just does not happen to people like us.
Right.
And so my definition of what was best for me then is nothing compared to what it is now. And so part of accountability, and this is what we do with our community and our events and our programs, is that system needs to be shocked enough that all of a sudden you redefine, like, that's not my best. Like, I have more.
Yeah.
I need to uncover it, and I need to learn how to push through it. Because if somebody truly believes they gave it everything they have and it didn't work out, to me, that would be pretty disheartening. That I would be settling for something else.
Yeah. And what we're not saying is, hey, you will bat 1,000. Like, everything will work. Like when I coach, I don't say to my players, like, if you guys do this, I guarantee you'll win. Like, maybe they're just better than you, right? But this really is about, like, full commitment, And so
we know that the odds of it working without it are 0.
Yeah.
Something could work for just long enough, but unless you're breaking through these levels, and if you own a successful business now, you'll get this. If you've had some big wins where you're like, I put everything on the line, it required so much more of me than I ever thought. My family had to buckle down for this to work. And we hear these stories, is that you'll eventually realize, like, oh, I got to level 5. I didn't know I was there, but level 5 is where we all have to get. And you may say, and this is part of the tool we have that you can go download, is, man, I'm at 3. And I had no idea, because I didn't even know there were 5 stages. Mm-hmm. And so part of this is, like, we're helping you put into context, like, where are you?
Yeah.
And then the goal should be, all my efforts need to be, is how do I move myself to stage 5?
Yeah. So, and again, the reason I found this to be so helpful is I didn't have the right names for these things. I didn't have the name I didn't know the difference between 3 and 4 was so significant. I didn't know the difference between 4 and 5 was so significant, but it is. So here's level 5. Level 5 is whatever it takes. So this level leads to results, as the author says. And there are things that people will do, and you see these things happen in transformations. Mm-hmm. You see it happen in relationships. I mean, I've been a part of a group of other couples from our church, and all of them actually in the group we're part of are older than us. And as they, help my wife and I walk through difficulties, they're like, hey, you want to be encouraged? Let me tell you about my story. And I'm like, holy smokes. okay, I feel better because they said I'm all in and they figured out like, hey, here's what needs to happen. I think that the other thing that we find with some people, and actually I was talking with an EN member today, it's interesting when they make this commitment. They made the commitment. It was about hiring someone. They made the commitment. That hire is not really working, but they didn't say, I'm not going to hire someone else. I tried. No, they're like, I'm going to go hire someone else.
Nice.
And so to me, it's like they made the commitment, and now that they're over the edge, it's like, now I'm going to get better at it. So again, it's not that it's going to work the way you thought it was going to work necessarily. It's just that you're going to stay committed to it no matter what. So the whatever it takes is that it cuts, and this is where I think I want you to speak to this. It cuts off all exit routes. I think that's the biggest difference between 4 and 5 is you just go, it's got to work, and or I'm not going to turn around until it works. I'm not going to exit until it works. I'm going to keep iterating until it works.
Yeah. When I did my first book project, 7 Mindsets of Success, I called this the safety net because for me, that's what it was. It was if I had something to where I knew there was a fallback, it always, I always held back something, some energy, some commitment, is that when I jumped out and started Legacy, there was nobody was going to pay my business rent. There was it had to work.
Yeah.
And so when I think about this stage, I would encourage you as you think about whether it's hiring somebody, whether you say, hey, all I've done is sell products, but I want to get paid for my time and advice. And we coach a lot of advisors how to do that. It's not necessarily that you're committing to whatever the process is to accomplish the ultimate goal. You're committing to the ultimate goal. And then you are going to iterate whatever it takes to get there over and over and over and over again. And so for the advisors that come to us, they say, I think my time and ideas are valuable. I want to get paid for it. Teach me how to do it. And within our teachings, there's variations. You may decide to work with this level of client, this level of client. But what they do not lose commitment to is that my time and ideas have value. And so as you use that tool, I encourage you to look through and say, okay, this is something I've always wanted for my business. I want to have a team. I want to have this kind of product shelf. I want to charge for my advice. Make a commitment to yourself for that, and then go find the people that are already doing it. Because there's no shortage of information, no shortage of training. But if you're saying, I'm willing to do that thing, then all you're doing is committing to getting better every day at it.
Yeah. And that I appreciate, and we'll end with this, the part where you said, look for other people. I think about those who have the level of success that most people want. And you can look at all the ones I can think of had this level of commitment where, where it's Elon Musk and said, if this rocket crashes, we're done. Right. Now he's had some rockets crash and they're still doing okay. But he's had ones where it was like, if this one doesn't work, we're done. Or I think about just other entrepreneurs who it's like, yeah, that had to work. And so I made it work because it had to work. And I think that one of the challenges of you listening of us is that, and it goes back to sort of that living in the 70 degrees, like if you have a safety net, if you have comfort, you will fall back to it. And so it is making a decision.
But sometimes that's reality. We meet advisors to where their spouse works. And they could totally just take the average path. And there's some that are like, no, I want to do this for myself. I want to personally reach my full potential, regardless of if my family has money or I inherited practice. That somehow your future self needs to unlock that. Because if you stay on the comfortable path, there will come a point in time where you look back and you are underwhelmed by your own story because you didn't take the risk, because you didn't kind of disrupt the status quo.
I would submit that most of the people listening to the show are underwhelmed by their story. And I mean it in this way, is that they want more. Not that they're miserable. I'm not saying that. I talk to a lot of very happy people who listen to the show. I hope you're one of them if you're listening or watching. But it's underwhelmed as in they want more. They know that there's more inside of them. And I hope that you'll go get this resource. stenmorgan.com/commitment is the link. And it's also in the show notes, stenmorgan.com/commitment. And that you'll apply some things. You'll list what the things that you want. You'll measure your level of commitment. And then you'll identify what does it really look like for you to commit the level 5 commitment to those things if you really want them. And I think there's some things that people are going to look at and go, I don't really want that. I'm not really willing to pay the price for that.
And there's some things you shouldn't. And that's why you shouldn't do this in a vacuum. That's why our community is great, because an advisor might bring something they're super fired up about. And, after 5 or 10 questions from the community, their confidence kind of drops and they realize like, oh, maybe that's not what I thought. So getting to level 5 on something that's not a good idea is not a good thing. So we want to get you to a 5 on great things. And so don't do this with the context of a team, a partner, a spouse. Like get input, because we don't want you going full bore, spending a bunch of money and time on something at the end of the day is not a great idea.
Absolutely. So go check that out, stenmorgan.com/commitment. And if you're listening to this in July, then there's still time to check out one of our webinars. We're doing several this month. Go to eadvisornetwork.com/webinar, also in the show notes, and you'll see which one we're teaching on this week. Stan, as always, thanks for your time.
Thanks, brother.